Okay, you all can begin.
Pleasant good night, everyone. Tonight, myself, along with my colleagues Mahindra Harinarayan and Ty Anthony Clark, will be presenting on Chapter 10, Leading Change. Next slide. So, the learning objectives for this presentation are as follows: Change or Perish, done by Ty Anthony; Leading a Major Change and Leading Everyday Change, done by myself; and Leading for Innovation and Implementing Change, done by Mahindra Harinarayan. Next slide. So here we have a video of a TED Talk by Taylor Harrell titled What Leaders Need to Know About Change. So pay close attention to the video because you'll just ask for some opinions afterwards, right?
Several years ago, I was on a flight, and this gentleman sits down next to me and strikes up the typical airplane small talk. So he says, "What do you do?" And I said, "I study and teach leadership." And without pause and dead serious, he goes, "Okay, so like trust falls and stuff." And I'm like, "What?" Because the part of me that had just spent about 7 years in grad school wanted to swear to this man, mostly to myself, that I didn't just spend that much of my life learning how to do trust falls. But the other part of me knew that this was a 4-hour flight, and I'm in a window seat. I have no idea how long I'm going to be committed to this conversation. So I just said, "Yeah, it's basically trust falls." As you can imagine, leadership development isn't exactly about doing trust falls, but it is about understanding what it takes to walk with people into the unknown and try to build a better world. So today I want to talk to you about one idea that's at the heart of the work that I do, and that's leading through change. Now, what if I asked you, what changes have you experienced in the last 2 years? It's an impossible question. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, work from home, come back to work, open the schools, close the schools, make banana bread, make sourdough. I mean, it hasn't stopped. It's all we've been doing. And we are tired. Psychologists call this change fatigue. It's where a lot of change is happening all at once, and so we get burned out and apathetic and frustrated. But change is always going to be a constant in our lives. And in fact, it's necessary for our progress in society and necessary for our evolution as human beings. So imagine the changes you've experienced in the last couple of years, and I'd like for you to raise your hand if you think that the leaders you saw did a fantastic job leading change. Okay, so uh, maybe 2 of you. This is good. This is job security for me. Um, but this is the reality. Good leadership is the exception. It's not the norm. But good leadership makes all the difference in how engaged and committed and hopeful we are as we walk into the future. Now, in my work, I often talk to leaders and I say, "What's the most difficult part about leading change?" And always they tell me it's the people, because people resist change. And they tell me about their attempts to start a new business or launch a new project or maybe new policies, new innovations. And they'll say it's so frustrating because people won't jump on board or they drag their feet or maybe just flat out oppose their efforts. Or they'll say, it's confusing because I talk to people and they say they're committed, they say they're with me, but then come to find out they've resorted back to their old habits and old behaviors and nothing changes. And then as leaders get more frustrated with the resistance that they're experiencing, they come to meet force with force. It's a very popular leadership technique that I call "because I said so." It's where leaders say, "Do it because I said so." Parents, you might also know this one. But as you can guess, this doesn't work, at least not in the long term. You might get compliance, but you'll rarely ever get true commitment. And at this point, the leader has exhausted their ability to inspire people's hearts and minds and influence them in that way. And so now they're relying on the authority of their position to make people change. And it's a relational dynamic that leaders and their people find themselves in time and time again. Why? We make one crucial mistake right from the start. We don't get curious about the true cause of resistance. What is underneath change that people actually resist? I came across an answer to this question in one of my very first leadership books that I read, a book by Ron Heifetz and Marty Linsky. And they said that people don't resist change, they resist loss. This completely altered the way that I thought about change. It's not the change that we resist itself, it's what we stand to lose if the change actually happens. And leaders spend so much of our time thinking about what we want people to do that we forget about what we're asking people to give up. Now, there's some classic research by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky that found that the pain of losing something is twice as powerful than the pleasure of gaining something else. So even if the future is looking pretty good, the fear of loss causes us to keep this white-knuckle grip on the status quo. Now, loss can encompass many things across the course of our life: people, places, things, future plans. But there are several core types of loss that are particularly painful in social environments, like ones where leadership is happening. And I want to explore 5 of those with you today. So first, safety, the most basic. Will this change jeopardize my sense of safety? On a neurobiological level, we all need to feel safe physically and psychologically. And we get these things, we get this predictability in our life from things like stable jobs and reliable finances and healthy relationships. Or maybe you've got some rituals and routines that you've set up for yourself. And the more predictability equals the more safety. So when something comes along that makes your life all of a sudden unpredictable, it equals danger. And so we push back, we grasp for certainty because we're looking for safety. 2, freedom. Now, just as we want to feel safe and secure and grounded, we also need to feel free. Fundamentally, we want a say in how our life unfolds, how we get from A to B, and the actions we take. Now think about this dilemma that so much of our workforce is facing right now. 60 million people could do their jobs completely from home. But Gallup just found that 90% would prefer a partial or remote work option. So if employers came back tomorrow and said, we need everybody in the office, butts in seats, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, expect resistance. Because this decision constrains the autonomy that people have come to value. 3, status. Will this change cost me my sense of status among my people? Social hierarchies govern our relationships as human beings, whether they're formal hierarchies or not. And the higher the status, the more respect, the more significance, the more power and influence you have. And once you have it, it's hard to let it go. This reminds me of an organization I worked with, and they were trying to implement this new technology that really changed the way they work together. And their people had to learn a lot of new things, and after several months, it wasn't very successful, it wasn't sticking, so I started to ask some questions, and I met Linda. And Linda told me, listen, I have been great at my job for 20 years. For 20 years, people come to me when they have questions, and now all of a sudden they're trying to get me to learn all these new things, and I'm not sure that I can or that I even want to, and I feel like people don't respect what I have to offer anymore. And I get it. I get it because I imagine if we felt like Linda, if we were in a position where we had spent 2 decades building a reputation, and all of a sudden that was going away with some change in our environment, we'd probably push back too. 4, belonging. Just as much as we want to stand out, we also want to belong. One of my clients, Sarah, she had just gotten a promotion, and she told me it was bittersweet, and I'm like, I don't understand, because promotions are good. And she said, you know, I've been at this job for years, and for years I've been peers with these people. They've been my friends, they've come to my wedding, and now all of a sudden I'm their boss. And it's like our relationship changed overnight. It feels distant, it feels strained. And I get it. This promotion gave her a sense of significance and status, but it also, she worried that it cost her belonging in a group that she really come to know and love. And for me, Sarah's story also reminds us of this paradox of change, that we can experience the same event and feel both joy and sadness. Joy for what we're gaining, but sadness for what we have to give up. And finally, 5, fairness. If you have a sibling, you know about fairness. One year for Christmas, my dad just got my sister and I the same exact gifts. He just got 2 of everything, completely identical, down to the print of our shirts. Most peaceful Christmas we've ever had. But when you encounter fairness out in the world and decisions are made that put fairness at stake, like for instance, decisions, actions that might challenge the right to marry who we love, or decisions that might exacerbate pay inequity, expect resistance. Now, as it turns out, there's a common thread among all of these core needs. The reason that they are so important to us and are so deeply painful to lose is because when we're asked to give them up, we have to question core parts of our identity. Who we think we are. Who am I without this job or title or person? What does it mean about me and my people if we keep getting the raw end of the deal? Will I recognize myself if I don't see myself as competent, or if people don't respect me? We cling so tightly to our identities, and so if change requires that we have to give up a part of ourselves, it feels like the ground is falling out from underneath us. And so how do we find our footing? There was a study done by Merlin Venus, a Dutch professor, and his colleagues, and it looked at 2 groups of students. And both groups of students were experiencing very disruptive changes in their business school, and they both got these messages about what the purpose for the change was, what they should expect, what were some of the potential setbacks, and what were all the future benefits. But the second group got one additional message. And this message said that despite these changes, the core aspects of our program, teamwork, professionalism, fairness, those will not change. The students in that second group were 4 times more likely to accept the change and adjust their behavior. So what does this mean? It means that people are more open to change when they know what will stay the same. So the vision of a bright new future, that's only one half of the equation. We also need to know what will continue. And we can bring that forward when we highlight the aspects of ourselves, of our identity, that will endure. So leaders must not act only as champions of change, but as anchors of stability and stewards of identity. Now you might be thinking, listen, I am just trying to get my people to use a new technology or get used to working with new team members, and you're telling me that someone is having a full-blown existential crisis down the hall. No, it might not be that dramatic, but don't underestimate the power that the threat of these losses has on our heart and minds and on shaping our behaviors. So, when change is happening and loss is on the horizon, how do we lead ourselves and others through it? Well, first, we have to consider the wisdom in resistance. Resistance can teach us if we let it. It can teach us what's important to ourselves and to others, and it can also teach us where we might have missed the mark, where perhaps our plans for change have caused harm, and so we need to go back and rethink our approach. But sometimes change is inevitable or it's necessary, and that means that loss is the price we pay for it, and also sometimes a necessary one. So, we have to name the losses that others are facing and that we're facing. Ignoring or dismissing these losses, either others or our own, only breeds resentment and anger. But acknowledging these losses is an exercise in telling the truth. It's an exercise in giving permission to grieve what's gone. It's an exercise in saying, I see you. And it puts us on the path toward acceptance. And then, shine a light on what stays the same. Leading change is a conversation about reimagining our future, yes, but it's also a conversation about remembering ourselves at the same time. By highlighting the parts of our identity that will endure, we give ourselves this anchor of stability as we navigate the unknown. And then finally, we can turn towards possibility, because when we know who we are and feel grounded in who we are, then we're free to dream about who we can become. So I'll leave you with this story about a time of change that I experienced in my life, and some of the most simple yet extraordinary moments of leadership as well. Years ago, I applied for this job in the leadership studies department, and this was the job to me. It was the dream job. And it was the job that many of my mentors had had before me. I would be in the classroom with students, doing what I loved, and so it was way more than a paycheck. It was a step toward who I wanted to become. And it also so happened that my mentor at the time was hiring for the job, so I was thinking, I got a pretty good shot. So after about a week, I hadn't heard from her, and so I email her and check in, and she just responds back, let's go for a walk. I'm like, you might as well have just texted me, we need to talk, or something equally as brutal, right? So I go, and it was a beautiful day outside, and we sit on this table, and I just kind of knew. I said, I didn't get it, did I? And she just calmly shook her head, and she said, no. And I could just feel the resistance in my body not wanting to accept the truth of this outcome, because in an instant, the picture I had of my future for the next 3 years just vanished. But what she said next made all the difference in how I was able to meet this moment. She said, I know this role was really important to you because it meant getting to do work that you love, and because some important people to you held this role before. But you can still do what you love anywhere else out in the world. And just her acknowledging what that meant for me, what that loss meant for me, it allowed me to really face it in myself, right? And to face that this was the reality. And I could feel the tightness in my body start to loosen a little bit. And then she said something I'll never forget. She said, it's up to you how you want to take this. But I hope you take this in a way I think your spirit can. And I just let that sink in for a moment. I hope you take this in a way I think your spirit can. And for me, it was like she was holding up a mirror to me, reminding me that I was resilient and determined and capable, and I love this work. And when I was able to come back home to that truth within myself, then I was able to feel grounded enough to accept the reality and then also consider the possibilities for my future. We've all experienced so much change and loss in the last couple of years, and it's going to be the same as we walk forward into our lives. So my hope is that the next time that change happens, we take the opportunity to practice leadership, whether that leadership is in your team or your community or your family, that we listen for the wisdom in resistance, that we meet the losses with empathy and anchor in the parts of ourselves that are steady and unwavering and let the rest go. And then it might be possible to write a new story of the future together. Thank you. Leadership is in your team.
Okay, so opinions, comments about the video, feel free to write them in the chat if needed. All right, well, I'll just offer some of my input on it. So this TED Talk basically explored the concept of leading through change, right? Focusing on the idea that resistance to change is often rooted in the fear of loss rather than the change itself. The speaker began by bringing up an encounter where someone equated leadership with trust falls, highlighting the misconceptions surrounding leadership development. The speaker delved into the notion of change fatigue, emphasizing the change and that is constant and necessary for progress. However, people often resist change due to various losses associated with it, such as safety, freedom, status, belonging, and fairness, as she mentioned. So these losses can threaten individuals' identities, leading to resistance. The talk had continued by discussing how leaders often overlook the significance of these losses and instead focus solely on the benefits of change. So, by acknowledging and addressing these losses, leaders can better navigate resistance and facilitate smoother transitions. Also, drawing from research and personal experiences, the speaker had emphasized the importance of understanding resistance and its underlying causes. So they advocate for leaders to act not only as agents of change, but also as stabilizing forces, reassuring individuals about what will remain unchanged amidst this transition. So the talk concluded with a personal story demonstrating the impact of acknowledging loss and finding resilience in the face of change. The speaker encourages listeners to approach change with empathy, resilience, and a focus on maintaining core aspects of identity. So ultimately fostering a collective effort towards building a new future. So overall, the talk offers insights into effective leadership during times of change, emphasizing the need to address resistance, acknowledging losses, and provide stability amidst uncertainty. Now I will hand you over to my colleague.
Thank you. So you're just making sure everybody could hear me as I'm also presenting. Everybody could hear?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes.
As I introduce the topic of change or perish, I would like to share this quote by Jack Welch. When the rate of change outside exceeds the rate of change inside, the end is in sight. What he means by this is that if a business is not able to adapt to external changes in its environment as quickly as they occur, it will simply fail. This may be considered harsh, but the point that was made proves to be relevant as the social, economic, and technological sectors of the economy continue to change rapidly. With these rapid changes, businesses require strong leaders who can incorporate change and motivate their employees to constantly put their best foot forward, especially in times of uncertainty or drastic change. Here are just a few of the characteristics that these leaders usually portray when implementing change successfully. 1. They define themselves as change leaders rather than trying to maintain a status. 2. They demonstrate courage when taking on new ideas or tasks that may seem to be challenging. 3. They believe in their employees' ability to fulfill their responsibilities. 4. They are able to implement values that promote adaptability and open mindedness. And 5, finally, they recognize and learn from their own mistakes. Now, I would like to play a short video depicting the real life importance of change and adaptability in the workplace.
If I had to pick one and say to someone, this is what you need to do to be successful throughout your career, adaptability is it. And the reason is the world today is not the world we're going to be living in 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 15 years from now. And my observation in general is that people that can adapt do very well throughout their careers. And here's the challenge. People often say, and I think this is totally false, that young people are much more adaptable than old people. Given that I'm one of the old people, I don't buy that, all right? But I think what it is people that are right out of school seem like they're more adaptable because they don't know anything else. So of course they're going to do the new technology or the new organizational trick or the new whatever the new thing might be. They don't know any different. But some of those people are very adaptable and some are not. And you don't really know that for 10 or 15 years after they've been in the workforce and things begin to change. And then the people that are not very good at adapting struggle. And that's when you find out who wasn't really adaptable. So, but the reality again is the world changes. Things are different. The workplace is different than what it was when I graduated, but it's also different than it was 5 years ago. It's different than it was 10 years ago. Work is getting automated, which was bringing out new opportunities for different kinds of work, but you've got to be open to those ideas. And sometimes it has nothing to do with technology. For example, in news, the way we write stories today based on users' tastes and needs is very different than the way we wrote stories 5 years ago or 10 years ago. People are looking, our customers are looking for shorter pieces that get right to the point as opposed to the long form stories. That's a change. You have to be willing to roll with that change. So adaptability is by far the most important skill, aspect, whatever you want to call it, that people need to have throughout their lives.
Thank you. I would now like to end my presentation of Change or Perish by thanking everyone for their attention and leaving you with one simple question. Do you believe you have what it takes to adapt and conquer in the workplace? I will now hand you over to my colleague.
Thank you. Leading a major change. Next slide. So let's first get to the introduction to major change. When defining major change in an organization, we must take into account all of its aspects and possible appearances. Significant changes like mergers, acquisitions, or technology revolutions frequently signify critical turning points in the development of an organization. These changes have the power to disrupt accepted norms, alter organizational structures, and reinvent cultural dynamics. Thus, in times of such change, leadership assumes a crucial role, acting as a compass to guide stakeholders through these periods of transition. Next slide, please. Key elements of leading major change. Each stage of the change management process demands meticulous attention and deliberate action from leaders. The journey begins with planning, where leaders chart a course for their change initiative, identifying objectives, assessing risks, and aligning resources. Effective communication, the backbone of organizational change, extends beyond disseminating information. It necessitates active engagement, empathetic listening, and tailored messaging to address stakeholders' concerns. As implementation unfolds, leaders must exhibit agility and adaptability, navigating unforeseen obstacles with resilience and resourcefulness. Finally, evaluation ensures that the change remains aligned with organizational goals, delivering tangible outcomes that drive sustainable growth. Real world examples serve as illuminating guideposts, offering insights into the nuances of successful change initiatives. Consider IBM's transformation under the stewardship of CEO Lou Gerstner, who orchestrated a paradigm shift by refocusing the company from hardware to services. By embracing a bold vision and rallying stakeholders around a shared purpose, Gerstner revitalized IBM, propelling it towards renewed relevance and resilience in a rapidly evolving market landscape. Conversely, Nokia shows the dangers of complacency in the face of disruptive technological advancements. As competitors seized the smartphone revolution, Nokia's reluctance to innovate led to a decline in market share, highlighting the importance of agility and foresight in navigating change. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Uh, this is the next one.
Yeah, well, it didn't change. All right. Leadership strategies for major change. Leadership in major change initiatives demands a multidimensional approach that embraces diverse styles and techniques. Transformational leadership, characterized by inspirational vision and charisma, serves as a catalyst for organizational renewal, inspiring stakeholders to embrace bold transformations. Meanwhile, participative leadership fosters collaboration and empowerment, leveraging collective intelligence to co create innovative solutions and navigate complex challenges. Similarly, servant leadership embodies humility and empathy, prioritizing the needs of others and fostering a culture of trust and collaboration. By embracing these varied leadership styles, leaders can adapt their approach to the unique demands of each change initiative, maximizing their effectiveness in guiding organizational transformation. Next slide. Managing resistance and overcoming challenges. Resistance to change is a normal and natural human reaction rooted in fear, uncertainty, and the perceived loss of control. Leaders must proactively address resistance by fostering open dialogue, soliciting feedback, and involving stakeholders in decision making. For example, when Procter& and Gamble acquired Gillette, CEO A.G. Lafley engaged in extensive communication and collaboration with employees to ease concerns and facilitate a smooth integration process. By acknowledging and addressing stakeholders' apprehensions with empathy and transparency, leaders can mitigate resistance and pave the way for successful change. Next slide. Sustaining change and driving continuous improvement. Sustaining change requires more than just achieving short term wins. It demands embedding new behaviors and norms into organizational DNA, so to speak. Leaders must foster a culture of continuous improvement by encouraging experimentation, learning from failures, and celebrating success. Google's renowned 20% time policy, which allows employees to dedicate a portion of their work week to passion project, exemplifies how fostering a culture of innovation can fuel long-term success. By institutionalizing mechanisms for ongoing learning and adaptation, leaders can ensure that change becomes a way of life within the organization, driving sustained growth and resilience. Next slide. So the Cutter's eight-stage model of plan change. This is the eight-stage model which I incorporated into the discussion before, which we just spoke about, but summarized. So stage one is where leaders establish a sense of urgency that change is really needed. Crises or threats will toll resistance to change. Stage two involves establishing a coalition with enough power to guide the change process and then develop a sense of teamwork among the group. So for the change process to succeed, there must be a shared commitment to the need and possibilities of organizational transformation. Middle management change will seek top leader support in the coalition itself. It is also essential that lower level executives become involved in this stage. Stage three requires developing a vision and strategy. Leaders are responsible for formulating and articulating a compelling vision that will guide the change effort, then developing the strategies for achieving that vision. Stage four, where leaders use every means possible to widely communicate the vision and strategy. At this stage, the coalition of change agents should set an example by modeling these new behaviors needed from employees. Stage five involves empowering employees throughout the organization to act on the vision. This means getting rid of obstacles to change, which may require revising systems, structures, or procedures that hinder or undermine the change effort. Stage six, where leaders generate short term wins. Leaders plan for visible performance improvements, enable them to happen, and celebrate employees who are involved in these improvements. Major change takes time, and a transformation effort loses momentum if there are no short-term accomplishments that employees can recognize and celebrate. Stage 7 keeps up the urgency, building on this credibility and momentum achieved by the short-term wins to tackle bigger problems. Successful change leaders don't simply declare victory after small wins and become complacent. They use courage and perseverance to give people the energy and power to take on more difficult issues. This often involves changing systems, structures, and policies, hiring and promoting people who can implement the vision, making sure employees have the time, resources, and authority they need to pursue this vision. And the final stage, stage 8, where leaders make the changes to stick. They transform these changes, and it isn't over until the changes have well established roots. Leaders instill new values, attitudes, and behaviors so that employees view the changes not as something new, but as a normal and integral part of how the organization operates. And it's good to note that skipping stages or making critical mistakes at any stage can cause the change process to fail. Next slide. Leading everyday change. Understanding everyday change, right? So we must first understand it. Everyday change represents the ongoing evolution of organizational processes, systems, and behaviors. While individual changes may seem minor, their cumulative impact can significantly influence organizational performance and competitiveness. From streamlining workflows to embracing emerging technologies, everyday change permeates every facet of organizational life, shaping its culture and its trajectory. Next slide. Leadership role in everyday change. Leaders play a pivotal role in fostering a culture of innovation and adaptability that enables continuous improvement. By empowering employees at all levels to identify opportunities for enhancement and change initiatives, leaders cultivate a dynamic and responsive organizational environment. So, for example, consider the organization of 3M, where a culture of innovation is ingrained in the company's DNA. By encouraging employees To spend 15% of their time on personal projects, 3M has fostered a spirit of creativity and experimentation that has led to groundbreaking inventions like post-it notes and scotch tape. Next slide. Building change capabilities. Building change capabilities within the organization requires a concerted effort to provide training, development opportunities, and support mechanisms for employees. Leaders must create cross-functional teams, establish feedback loops, and promote knowledge sharing to facilitate continuous learning and improvement. For instance, Amazon's two pizza teams empower employees to take ownership of projects, fostering a culture of autonomy and innovation. By investing in the development of change-ready teams and individuals, leaders can ensure that the organization remains agile and adaptive in the face of evolving challenges. Next slide. Encouraging experimentation and risk-taking. Leaders must create a psychologically safe environment where employees feel empowered to experiment, take risks, and learn from their failures. By embracing a growth mindset and celebrating both successes and setbacks, leaders foster a culture of innovation and resilience. Pixar Animation Studios, renowned for its creative and collaborative culture, encourages experimentation and risk-taking as essential components of the creative process. By providing a safe space for exploration and learning, leaders enable these individuals and teams to push boundaries and unlock their full potential. Next slide, please. Aligning everyday change with strategic goals. Aligning everyday change initiatives with strategic goals and priorities is essential for driving organizational success. Leaders must ensure that change efforts are prioritized, resourced appropriately, and measured against key performance indicators. For example, Tesla's relentless focus on innovation and sustainability aligns with its strategic goal of revolutionizing the automotive industry. By aligning everyday change efforts with strategic objectives, leaders can steer the organization towards its desired future state, maximizing value creation and competitive advantage. Next slide. Continuous learning and improvement. Emphasizing continuous learning and improvement is critical for maintaining organizational effectiveness and competitiveness. Leaders must create opportunities for employees to share best practices, leverage technology and data analytics, and foster a culture of collaboration and knowledge sharing. So, for example, Netflix's freedom and responsibility culture empowers employees to take ownership of their work and learn from both success and failures. So, by embracing a culture of continuous learning and improvement, leaders enable the organization to adapt rapidly to changing market dynamics and seize emerging opportunities. To summarize, by embracing these principles and practices, leaders can effectively navigate major change initiatives and embrace a culture of continuous improvement within their organizations. Through strategic vision, empathetic leadership, and a commitment to learning and growth, leaders can inspire positive change and drive long-term success. I'll now hand you over to my colleague.
Leading for innovation. Firstly, let's watch a short video on leading for innovation.
So what I love about the work you guys do, you and Jeff, is this idea that anybody can be innovative. You don't have to be someone special, born that way, like a Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos. But what are the key behaviors and how do you become innovative if you're not instantly that way?
Great question. So basically, we interviewed over 100 plus innovators and realized there were patterns in how they behave. So if you and I shadowed them and watched them for a day and just trailed them, we'd see them asking tons of provocative questions to push and challenge the status quo. We'd see them out there observing the world like anthropologists, design thinkers going out and doing their sort of observational work. They talk to people who are just not like them. They don't think like them. They don't have experiences like them. They're very different perspectives. They're willing to try just about anything, experiment the heck out of the world. So they're always trying cheap, quick, fast experiments. And all of that behavior helps them to think differently. So when they have to combine things in new and creative different ways that nobody else has seen before,
Yeah.
all of that homework, that work they do every day, helps them get these really disruptive insights.
And how do they make sure that those insights, because anyone can have an idea, but how do you execute? Are those people necessarily good at executing?
So really there are two parts to that question. One piece is all ideas are not created equal. So if I've got somebody sitting in their office just being creative and coming up with some idea versus someone else who gets out of their office, does this active discovery work, you know, they're out there observing and talking and trying and experimenting, and they come up with an idea, that second person's idea is just better and less risky than the first person's. And that's sort of the energy that creates ideas that aren't just creative, but they actually make impact.
Right.
And the second part of that is all disruptive innovators, not all, but most disruptive innovators are not good executors.
Huh.
They don't have the behavioral skills or interest in getting things done the way someone who's just results focused and driven.
Right.
And so what we've noticed is, in general, these are teams of people who complement each other, and together, at the top and throughout an organization, they pull off great ideas and make them happen.
What I love about the list too is the names of companies, because it's unlike, I haven't heard a lot of these companies. I've been doing this for a while. So even in the top 10, there's this Brazilian cosmetics company called Natura.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with that? Why are they ranked so highly, and how is cosmetics even on par with semiconductors and the internet, some much faster paced industries?
That's the same thing we noticed, Bruce, which is basically you've got a very diverse set of industries on this list, and it almost feels random. Mm-hmm. But when you poke inside of it, like in Natura Cosméticos in Brazil, you've got this company where 3 people collaboratively run the top of that system. There are 3 co-CEOs. They're very different people, different skills, different backgrounds, different perspectives, and that diversity at the top enables them to not only pay attention to the bottom line, but they care deeply about the social and environmental impact of their work. And they get out and they employ and use their people to go into Brazil and beyond to source unique new natural products for their cosmetics, to respect the communities they get those products from, and deliver it to consumers in a way that's valuable and exciting to them.
So what I love about the work you guys do, you and Jeff, is this.
Okay, next slide. Introduction for Leading for Innovation. Leading for Innovation is basically a diverse strategy combining visionary leadership with a flexible and creative culture that is needed to lead for innovation. It entails motivating groups to think creatively, creating a culture that welcomes experimentation, and promoting an attitude that views both failure and success as necessary steps on the path to innovation. It involves getting clear goals, promoting cooperation, and rewarding creative thinking. Leaders must be prepared to question status, adapt to emerging technology, and constantly seek novel approaches to add value to stakeholders and clients. In the end, leaders who are great at leading for innovation are not just creative thinkers. They are also skilled at creating an environment that fosters creativity. They inspire people to accept change, take smart choices, and achieve lofty goals by setting an example of curiosity, resilience, and agility. The creative organization. Taken from the textbook, leaders can build an environment that encourages creativity and helps the organization to be more innovative. 5 elements of innovative organizations are listed in Exhibit 15.4, and each is described below. These elements correspond to the characteristics of creative individuals listed to the right of the column of the exhibit. Alignment. As seen in the table, the individual commits and also focuses on approaching what he or she may encounter. Everyone's interests and behaviors must line up with the organization's mission, vision, and goals in order to innovate acts and benefits the business to continuously occur. Leaders define specific goals, communicate and company's values, and advance the vision constantly. Creative values. This says that the individual is interdependent, persistent, and full of energy, meaning the majority of the people naturally want to create and discover, which inspires them to start creative projects on their own. Unfortunately, teachers who enforce strict obedience to the rules might suppress this motivation at a young age. Deeply ingrained employee motivation for creativity and innovation can be released by leaders. Unofficial activity. This shows that the individual is self-confident, non-conform, and curious. This means that the workers must have the freedom to imagine and try new things outside of the typical job duties. Leaders have the authority to grant people free time for non-official activity. According to a study on creativity, the unofficial period was usually often when the creative act's essence originated. Dream time allows businesses to expand into areas they never would have thought possible. Diverse stimuli. In the table, it shows that the individual is open-minded, has conceptual fluency, and enjoys variety. This means that it is hard to predict in advance what stimuli a given individual would find inspiring to generate a creative thought. The sparks that ignite original ideas might be supplied in the part by leaders. To expose individuals to a variety of viewpoints, organizations like Bell Laboratories or Lucent Technologies and Nortel Networks broadband host guest lectures on a range of subjects. And finally, internal communication. This shows that the individual is social competent, emotionally expressive, and loves people. Frequent interactions with diverse networks of individuals at all organization level fosters creativity. It is impossible to execute ideas from creative departments or idea champions without sufficient internal communication and cooperation. Take a look at how Samsung Electronics executives have used these concepts to promote innovation and inspire designers and engineers to create original goods rather than producing terrible knockoffs. Next slide.
It changed?
Nah, not yet.
Don't know.
Nothing changed yet.
Change on my screen. I don't know.
Nice. I'm not seeing a change.
Good.
Leading creative people. Leading creative people also requires a balance of fostering their unique talents while providing structure and guidance to channel their creativity effectively. Here are some strategies for leading creative individuals. Number one, provide clear objectives. While creativity strives on freedom, it's essential to establish clear goals and objectives to guide the creative process. Communicate the vision, mission, and desired outcomes clearly, providing a framework within which creative individuals can explore and innovate. Number two, encouraging autonomy. Creative people often thrive when given the freedom to explore and experiment. Providing autonomy, and trust them to make decisions, take ownership of their work, and pursue their ideas. Avoid micromanagement, and instead focus on providing support and resources to enable their success. Number 3, create a supportive environment. Foster a culture that values and celebrates creativity where individuals feel empowered to share their ideas, take risks, and learn from failure. Encourage open communication, collaboration, and constructive feedback, creating a safe place for creative expression and innovation. Number 4, facilitate collaboration. Creativity flourishes in environments where diverse perspectives come together. Encourage collaboration among creative individuals, fostering cross-disciplinary teams and facilitating opportunities for brainstorming, ideas sharing, and co-creation. Encourage individuals to learn from one another and leverage their unique strengths and perspective. Number 5, provide resources and opportunities for good. Support creative individuals by providing access to resources, tools, and training that enable them to develop their skills and realize their potential. Offer opportunities for professional development, mentorship, and exposure to new experiments and challenges that inspire creative and innovation. By providing guidance, support, and enhancement, while also allowing space for autonomy and exploration, leaders can effectively lead creative individuals and harness their talents to drive innovation and success within the organization. Brainstorming. Organization brainstorming session is a smart strategy for executives to foster innovation. Let's say a company is dealing with an issue like how to lower machine room noise. Expedite checkout, cut down on food waste, and minimize shoplifting losses. During a face-to-face interaction group brainstorming session, a variety of original ideas for problem solving are spontaneously suggested. The key to effective brainstorming are: number 1, no criticism. While ideas are being generated spontaneously, group members should refrain from offering any criticism or assessment of any ideas. Every concept is regarded as precious. Number 2, freewheeling is welcome. Any notion that comes to mind, no matter how strange or fantastical, should be expressed. It is important for brainstormers to convey their creative ideas without fear. It's most important to get the stupidest idea out there and build it than not having it in the first place, stated an Intel employee who works full-time as an idea developer. Number 3, quantity desired. Creating as many ideas as you can is the aim. More suggestions are preferable. Finding great solution is more likely when there are lots of ideas. Ideas should also be combined. Every concept belongs to the group, and participants should, wherever possible, expand and change them. Let's watch a next video on lateral thinking.
Lateral thinking explained. Lateral thinking is a manner of solving problems using an indirect and creative approach via reasoning that is not immediately obvious. It involves ideas that may not be obtainable using only traditional step-by-step logic. Considered pseudoscience by some, The term was first used in 1967 by Edward de Bono in his book The Use of Lateral Thinking. De Bono cites the judgment of Solomon as an example of lateral thinking, where King Solomon resolves a dispute over the parentage of a child by calling for the child to be cut in half, and making his judgment according to the reactions that this order receives. Edward de Bono also links lateral thinking with humor, arguing it entails a switch over from a familiar pattern to a new, unexpected one. It is this moment of surprise, generating laughter and new insight, which facilitates the ability to see a different thought pattern which initially was not obvious. According to de Bono, lateral thinking deliberately distances itself from the standard perception of creativity as vertical logic, the classic method for problem solving. Lateral thinking has to be distinguished from critical thinking. Critical thinking is primarily concerned with judging the true value of statements and seeking errors, whereas lateral thinking focuses more on the movement value of statements and ideas. A person uses lateral thinking to move from one known idea to new ideas. Edward de Bono defines 4 types of thinking tools. Idea-generating tools intended to break current thinking patterns, routine patterns, the status quo. Focus tools intended to broaden where to search for new ideas. Harvest tools intended to ensure more value is received from idea-generating output. Treatment tools that promote consideration of real-world constraints, resources, and support.
Lateral thinking. Lateral thinking is how the majority of people think in a predictable, almost linear manner that progresses from one idea to the next. However, original ideas are rarely produced via linear reasoning. When someone starts with an issue or concept and builds sequentially from there, they are exhibiting linear thinking. Applying lateral thinking is a more inventive strategy. A collection of methodical strategies are for altering mental conceptions and perceptions and creating new ones is known as lateral thinking. When someone uses lateral thinking, they think sideways. They experiment with various viewpoints, ideas, and entry points in an effort to come up with fresh answers. Lateral thinking seems to employ an unconventional or perhaps non-essential approach to issue solving. Next slide.
It didn't change up?
No.
Let's try again. It should come up. Nothing.
Okay, I changed it.
Okay, good.
Creative intuition. Creative intuition is a natural ability to generate novel ideas, make innovative connections, and solve problems in unconventional ways without necessarily relying on conscious logical reasoning. It's a form of intuitive thinking that taps into our subconscious knowledge, experiences, and emotions to inspire creative insights and solutions. Here are some key aspects of creative intuition. Number 1, pattern recognition. Creative intuition often involves recognizing patterns and making connections between seemingly unrelated concepts or ideas. Number 2, nonlinear thinking. This is creative intuition, which is inherently nonlinear, allowing ideas to emerge spontaneously and unpredictably. Number 3, emotional intelligence. Creativity is deeply intertwined with emotions, and creative intuitions often involves tapping into our emotions to fuel the creative process. Number 4, openness to experience. Creative intuition flourishes in individuals who are open-minded, curious, and receptive to new experiences. And number 5, trust and confidence. Trusting one's intuition is essential for harnessing creative insights. Creative individuals learn to trust their instincts and have confidence in their ability to generate innovative ideas, even when those ideas may initially seem unconventional or risky. Implementing change. Now we will watch another small video on change management.
Every day we manage to navigate an exponential amount of changes in our lives, big and small, from overcoming road detours and downloading new apps, to adopting flexible office environments or moving overseas. At the individual level, change is a human process we all experience when we try new things, do things differently, or when something impacts the way we function day to day. The way we experience change is very personal. It's our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, positive or negative, that drive our behaviour. They determine if we perceive change as a threat that needs to be avoided or an opportunity to be embraced. How we respond to change can determine the success of projects or transformation initiatives, and when we consider that organisations are comprised of groups of individuals, the challenge of change management becomes so much greater. Change for organisations is now constant. Customer and business demands are changing, technology is becoming more agile, and our work environment is constantly evolving. With a greater degree of change on its way, a company's ability to adapt successfully at an individual and organisational level will make the difference between whether the company survives or thrives. And this is where change management comes in. Change management is a business discipline focused on navigating change by exploring key questions such as who the change affects, how the effect will be felt, and what the change will ultimately deliver and by when. This discipline focuses on increasing acceptance and adoption of changes by reducing uncertainty, confusion, and human angst as the people transition unfolds. This can get complex, especially as multiple changes overlap. As such, change management has evolved into both a profession and an organisational capability. People that are highly skilled at designing and enabling effective change processes and practices have become specialists in this business discipline, while organisations are building internal change capabilities to better manage and adapt to constant change. In a busy workplace where priorities compete, it takes effort from everyone, individuals, leaders, and those tasked with implementing the change to achieve collective organisational change. And you'll know you've accomplished this when you can truly say that leaders demonstrate sound leadership and consciously dedicate time to engage their teams in conversations about the changes. The pace and volume of change is managed, and those responsible for implementation understand how different change initiatives fit together. Project frameworks incorporate strong people change processes. Change is implemented with true and transparent input from those impacted. And change processes are managed through effective partnership between change professionals and business leaders. To help you on your change journey, connect with the Change Management Institute today. We're all about supporting our members and our community to be better connected, to strengthen capability and enhance credibility.
The tools for implementation. By employing the techniques we covered for gradual day-by-day change and following the 8-step model that was covered earlier in this chapter, leaders may increase the likelihood of the successful outcome. The 8 stages are as follows. Number 1, clarify the vision. This uses the vision statement and SWOT analysis. Number 2, communicate effectively. This uses the communication plan template and stakeholder analysis matrix. Number 3, engage stakeholders. This uses stakeholder engagement platform and stakeholder mapping tools. Number 4, empower employees. This is a training and development software and employee empowerment surveys. Number 5, manage resistance. This uses resistance management plan and change impact assessment tool. Number 6, establish milestones and metrics. This uses the project management software and key performance indicators dashboard. Number 7, provide support and resources. This is a resource allocation tool and support network directory. Number 8, foster a culture of continuous improvement. This is an idea management platform and continuous innovation improvement framework. Leaders also, last slide, go back.
Yeah, I went back. It's sticking.
Then change it. I will continue.
Yeah.
Leaders also inspire others to take action by appealing to both their hearts and intellect. Accomplished leaders employ many techniques like narrative, analogy, comedy, symbolism, and a personal touch to connect with individuals to an emotional level and persuade them to embrace suggest modifications. Next slide. The two faces of change. The two faces of change are the opportunity face and the challenge face. The opportunity face are change. Number 1, change presents opportunities for good innovation and improvement. It opens doors to new possibilities, new markets, and new ways of working. Number 2, change can stimulate creativity and encourage individuals and organizations to think outside the box, challenge the status quo, and explore alternative solutions. The challenge phase, change often disrupts the status quo and introduces uncertainty, ambiguity, and complexity. It can be uncomfortable and unsettling, leading to resistance, fear, and anxiety among stakeholders. And number 2, change requires individuals and organizations to navigate transactions, overcome obstacles, and cope with loss and uncertainty. It may involve letting go of familiar routines, process, or identities, which can be difficult and emotionally challenging. Redefining roles and duties, re-engineering the business, redefining positions, departments, or division, or shrinking the organizations are some of the most challenging organization reforms. These kinds of adjustments frequently result in some persons suffering grave consequences since they will lose their employment. One of the most challenging circumstances that managers encounter is downsizes. They must manage the layoffs in a way that minimizes the suffering and stress of the departing workers while preserving the confidence, morale, and productivity of the remaining staff members. Now, as I end this presentation, I will now pass you on to my colleague.
Thank you. In conclusion, we would like to thank you all for your patience and attention, and once again stress the importance of leading change on a whole, as the world is constantly evolving at a rapid pace. We hope this presentation has been informative and enjoyable for all. Thank you.
right, as there are no questions, I'm going to stop the recording.